Welcome to season 2 of Fresh Off the Boat. My name is Arjun. I'm the founder director of Edbrand and College Fair Live. Today, I'm delighted to be chatting with Aashima Arora. She graduated from high school years ago. So, for all the audience members who are still in school, you could hear words of wisdom about education choices she's made, also 3 different sort of jobs over the course of 6 to 8 years after she graduated from Lady Shri Ram College, pursuing economics and a bunch of other topics. So, Aashima, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks a lot, Arjun, for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Aashima Arora. I graduated from LSR in 2014 after doing a major in economics. And post that, I've been working across finance, across climate tech, investing, and now Web3 and investing. So there have been a lot of different journeys that I've had, and I'll be very happy to talk about them.
Yeah, one interesting aspect which I typically also notice is our students start thinking too far ahead. They want to okay, I'm going to be in college and then I'll work for 2 3 years and I'll do this and I'll maybe do a grad school or an MBA or a PhD, and sort of planning too well in advance. How was it like for you moving from a co-ed popular high school in the Delhi region, to a all-women's college to Lady?
I think that had to be one of the biggest decisions of my life, to be entirely honest with you. Because I think the kind of exposure that you get in a co-ed school your entire life is very different inherently from the perception that we have of, and like, let's say, an all girls institute in India. Yeah, definitely it was something that I had to settle in. But I think beyond gender, we realize so many different things that you get to know about people who are similar to you, right? So it is from sometimes even the uniformity as well as combined diversity that actually makes you into the person or the personality that you eventually end up having. And to answer the first part of your question, I completely agree. I think what I had in mind when I was in, let's say, 10th, when I decided not to pursue medical and went for like a standard, sort of science with economics model, um, at that point, what I thought I would be, I'm nowhere close to being that at all. But to be honest, I'm significantly happier for it as well.
So, in terms of settling into a different kind of routine in Delhi University, though LSR takes pride in the fact that they do it differently and they have a lot more engagement for students who attend. What kind of academic inspirations did you draw from that setting? DU has changed with its curriculum over maybe post you graduating, but what was it like for you? What was the significant difference between being in a CBSE curriculum to then moving to DU?
I think definitely the kind of opportunities that you get at a college level, be it in DU, be it even like a tier 2, tier 3 university in India, any college gives you those kind of avenues that you can explore, which, to be honest, I feel that CBSE seem to be lacking. So something as basic as the drive behind internship, the exposure to sort of looking into what startups are doing, what exactly entrepreneurship is about, these are not courses that are taught in DU, but these are just fundamental vibes of the campuses where you get attracted to it and you try out different things, which is, I feel, very lacking from the CBSE system, because there is more of a sort of very traditional theoretical academic push when it comes to the boards that we have in our country, as opposed to the environment that colleges like LSR have been able to create, apart from the, of course, the curriculum that we have, which I would say has its own checks and balances. But definitely, I think those are the kind of exposures that I got, which I didn't really have in school. And they sort of, they set you up to succeed eventually after ensuring you fail a few times as well. So I think having those kind of diverse opportunities at that young an age is always like a fantastic thing to do.
So, student life is not just about academics and a college setting. And I think you sort of held the bull by its horns and sort of discovered your leadership interest, being a founder member of the consulting club, for one, or even working as an executive member of the Alumni Association, which is, in retrospect, perhaps a very smart move, like in terms of networking, getting to know people.
Right.
Yeah, so what were some of the highlights of your student life beyond school classroom, let's say, at
So So I think growing up, to be entirely honest with you, Arjun, I was a very big nerd, right? Like I was only into ACADS. Maybe I tried venturing into debating, MUN a little bit, maybe sort of, editorial a little bit in school. But there was no sort of, I would say, a hobby that I ever actively pursued. In college, I kind of did a little bit of everything. I realized that life is actually beyond the classroom, like you said, and I spent very less amount of time in the classroom, as was reflected by my grades as well. But the fundamental charm of it was that I actually ended up being in Enactus, which is a very entrepreneurship driven, organization at an international scale with chapters across different colleges in India. So I was on the advisory board for that. Beyond college, also, there was consulting for social good, which was a startup setting out of IIT Delhi, which is again very proximate to LSR. Had a bunch of friends there, worked as a founding member of that organization. I was the youngest director for Rotaract in South Delhi, which is again a totally different organization apart from LSR, IIT Delhi, etc. There are just so many things. I remember at one point I was talking to a very close friend of mine, and so she used to ask me, okay, what all do you do apart from classes? And this was, I think, the end of first year. And I counted in my head, I was in 11 societies at that time, and I was doing 4 internships at the same time. So that is the amount of hustle that I tried to create. And I'm not kidding. I sucked at so many different things. I failed at so many different things. But then the ones that I succeeded at are the ones that you just listed down. So being a part of the alumni community, for example, was 3 years in the making. I was in college when I heard about it. Of course, it's LSR Alumni Network. It's an international organization with their own charter, with their own initiatives on an annual basis that they run, with their own finances and budgets that they maintain, and the kind of inspiration and scholarships that they can actually provide to the college students. So I, sort of started working very closely with them. And last year, finally, I became a governing member of the LSR Alumni Committee, now actually leading setup of the endowment fund that we use to give scholarships to economically weaker section girls who are entering LSR. So those are the kind of things that I've been able to achieve at this point. But I mean, the number of times I've made a fool of myself back in LSR also, of course, obviously stays with me to this day. It's really a humbling experience, I feel.
I think a lot of your just diving in and sort of discovering your strengths along the way and honing on those strengths was really something that I take from these conversations. A lot of high energy and engagement with the people around you. So
Yeah.
kudos to you. I think very often Delhi University schools like Lady Shri Ram also have that air of success around it, right? So there's that pressure also
Oh, yes.
to get that first right job and sort of compete in the senior year to sort of be the most sort of valued find for say companies. And you ended up at Citibank, and so tell us a little bit more about that journey of applying or journey to get to a banking industry job.
Got it. So I think, like you've said correctly, there's a lot of pressure. I think we can maybe even talk about a little bit about the mental health concerns that this raises during college years. And I was actually diagnosed with clinical depression during my second year of college. And I've been in therapy since, and I've been very vocal about it. I've gone and, sort of spoken to not just my college, but like so many other kids to actually take out and seek out the help that they need as early as possible and not wait till the point that I did. So I think being a topper.
Let's stop here a little bit. I think this whole idea of mental health is also so much in the work that we do, especially with COVID students. So we see them suffering, even team members, including me. Just thinking about the worries that kids have these days, it's really frightening at one level, and there's also that need for empathy. So, what kind of issues do you think sort of kind of ail the young generation today who want to do so much but somehow get thwarted in their ambitions or goals?
So I think I can really relate to the kind of issues that I've heard. Recently, I was invited back to LSR, and there was this entire quorum that happened where I was not really a speaker. It was more of a conversation where I'm hearing what is happening with students, across LSR, and I'm giving my thoughts as to what I also went through. There's this external pressure definitely that is not recent, that has been for around for quite some time. But I think with the prevalence of social media and more around the fact that there are bigger names of institutes, let's say, that are in play, not just parents but like entire communities start expecting more from their younger relatives, for example, or younger children. So I think that external pressure has not really changed. It has significantly increased in certain aspects. At the same time, I think because of the access to internet that all of us also have, I mean, there's nobody who is not really present on the internet in one way or the other. So we do see people our age, people a couple of years elder to us succeeding. So that ends up creating this, sort of unconscious, subconscious, internal pressure as well, where we feel that we are somehow not good enough. That results in further lack of confidence and insecurities to pursue opportunities that may be right for us. And that is pretty much what happened with me as well. Being a topper your entire life, let's say in like 500 students batch, right? Even in one of the good schools, doesn't mean that you will be number one everywhere. And that humbling experience is what inherently, I think, sort of is something that most people can't really handle at a certain level. So be it in school, be it in college, whenever you get exposed to it, it's something that, oh, okay, so I am not as good enough as I thought I was. And that would make you further insecure about going out in public. So there was this entire period when I refused to go for any parties, any social gatherings apart from classes, trying to do everything virtually because I felt that I am not good enough to be in a room with certain types of people. There's also a, sort of like a I would say a subtext of peer pressure. Even if your peers are not forcing you to do something, just looking at them, maybe the kind of families that they are from, maybe the kind of books that they've read, or maybe the kind of talents they hone over the years, that can also really create this kind of sort of unwanted pressure where you might want to actually just push yourself to a certain level and then try out something new. But again, because of the insecurities or the lack of confidence, that just sort of it becomes like a failed adventure.
Interesting. So, how did you see that in your years of work? You've been at work almost for uh,
5 years.
yeah, 5 to 6 years now. So, how has that changed for you? How did you gain confidence, and now you have leadership roles, and also describe your journey from finance to working as a product manager, and then also at Polygon Tech.
Right. So I think just to kind of loop back a little bit to the question that you asked earlier as well, how did I enter finance in the first place and how difficult it was to get a job from LSR? So I think when you don't have the confidence, you don't really put yourself out there. So what had actually happened was City had come for an internship in my second year. And one of the people who were interviewing on the panel was actually an LSR alum. And I had sort of so many other commitments. I was actually working on some other society work that day, and I requested that one person to give me another chance for the interview on a later date. And that didn't really happen. But she remembered my name because I had sort of written a very nice email to her requesting for whether that could be a possibility. And then over time, I had kind of stayed in touch with her to ensure that yes, if they are coming to campus this time around, I'll ensure that my priorities are in order and I'm free on that specific day. So I automatically shot to the top of her interviewing list. So I was the first person that she interviewed as well when the entire panel came to campus and they recruited for like different roles. So I think it's basically just putting your true intentions out there and having faith in the fact that people that you are actually reaching out to are no sort of seniors. They are experienced professionals, and at some level they were also where you are today. So I really relate to anybody who reaches out to me and says, okay, can I please get an opportunity to just do an internship at Polygon? There's every single one of these messages I always make a point to reply to. So I think it is always a good idea to just put yourself out there. What's the worst that could happen? You'll get rejected. You'll find another thing. So I think that is something that needs to be sort of there. And coming to the confidence bit of things, I feel that faking it till you make it actually works. It has worked for me. It has worked for so many different juniors that I've discussed this with. Just try to tell yourself that yes, you are confident enough, you're smart enough to be in the room where you are standing today. And then over time, you'll actually inherently start believing it.
Fantastic. And so also about specific, jobs that you found interesting at City and then at APAG and now at Polygon Tech. So if you want to give a quick summary, I think that'll be really useful for listeners to see that there's so much diversity in the work that you've done, but there's also a thread, maybe the leadership or something else.
Right. So I think for me, City was my first role. I was working across fixed income currencies, commodities, and equities, and sales, trading, and structuring. So there, of course, it was a very standard markets role. We had Indian born behemoth clients as well as gigantic global companies with Indian entities. And of course, I was handling like a portfolio of my own companies. And 3 months into City, I was asked to look into cryptocurrencies as a viable asset class, because that is right around the second Bitcoin bull run that happened. And I spent 2 3 months of research speaking to fantastic crypto traders across Reddit, 4chan, different exchanges. And then eventually, we kind of dismissed it because because of the high volatility, we can't really use as a viable asset class for corporate clients. But by then, I was already down the rabbit hole. So I started crypto trading back in 27 towards the end of 2017, and I'm to this day still a crypto trader. After City, when I left City, I wanted to work in something emerging. The idea behind that entire sort of motivation was because of all the different startup clients that I'd worked with over the different portfolios that I'd managed at City in 2 years. I wanted to work in, let's say, some sort of growth room, operation strategy, or investing, anything to do with emerging tech. When I say emerging tech, it is Web3, it is climate tech, EV mobility, it is health tech, med tech, so on and so forth. So the fundamental idea was that, okay, let's see what else is out there in the market. And this was back in 2019, which was even prior to the DeFi summer in a way, because of the wave that hit India a little late, and we had very minimal, almost negligible startups in India that were doing anything in Web3. So I decided to work with Ashish Dhawan, who's an HBS analyst, and in a way a godfather of private equity in India. He started and ran Chrysalis Capital ground up, and he started this, venture called Air Pollution Action Group, which was inherently focused on climate change. And I was the first person that he hired. I was basically a part of the founding team, and just the kind of exposure that I got working across the highest level of, let's say, the president's commission on air quality, all the way to different state governments, politicians, bureaucrats, the different corporates that I worked with on strategy building, how to work in climate tech, EV, and of course the startup challenge that I ran, where I did it was India's first international startup challenge that I worked very closely with Access, Sequoia, Matrix, etc., to make it happen. And we basically invested in a bunch of very high quality startups that were building something that can actually change the landscape of climate tech in India. So that is basically where I got exposed to, I would say, the traditional way of venture capital investing. And because I came from a banking background, while I was at APAC, I was not used to working like less than 15-hour days. So on the side, I started something known as Fund of Friends with a couple of friends of mine, who are, of course, very successful entrepreneurs in our country at this point. We scaled up this angel network from 3 4 people to 157 angel investors to this day. We deployed 4.2 million in capital over the last 18 months. We made 3 10x plus exits, and a bunch of the startups that we invested in were actually Web3 as well. So I decided to combine everything that I was doing. I was working in Startup Challenge and venture capital at work. I was doing crypto trading otherwise, and I was running an angel investing, firm along with a couple of friends where we were doing Web3 investments. So that is where everything just came together. And when the Polygon opportunity presented itself, I think it was just inevitable for me to apply and go ahead with it. So now at Polygon, I am running a $200 million ecosystem fund with the dual objective, of course, supporting the Polygon ecosystem, which is Polygon is nothing but an internet of blockchains. We want to be the next AWS of Web3. So we have a bunch of startups that build on Polygon. So we want to attract high quality projects and startups and founders that are building in Web3 to come and build on Polygon. So that is one idea behind the fund. But because we did almost $500 million raise recently, the LPs that participated in that raise, like Tiger, SoftBank, Sequoia, Axel, etc., they own 30% of our fund as well. So that is where we actually see ourselves as running a separate venture arm within Polygon, where we do need to be cognizant of the kind of multiple and invested capital, IRR, and other financial metrics that I won't bore your audience with, that a traditional fund has to look after. So that is where we are supporting the Web3 community as well as making money in the process.
So this is really fascinating in terms of what Polygon Tech is doing and that whole ecosystem that's being created. So traditionally, when it was Web 1.0 or 2.0, it was really open to all, right? In the sense that any industry could participate, and many jumped in early. There were use cases that came up for the rest, they caught on. Uh, what is it that Polygon is seeing? What kind of early adoption is happening on your platform? Which industries are sort of leading the way? Maybe finance. I think that's something that you've been mentioning repeatedly.
Right. So I think finance at some level, yes. So we had like a DeFi wave a few years ago. We call it the DeFi summer. So at that point, we had like the initial very creative decentralized finance startups coming up that of course started building on Polygon as well. But I think the majority of the high quality and the kind of waves that we are seeing in terms of use cases is from a gaming, NFT, and metaverse perspective, because of the significance of, not just from a money making point of view, but also from the kind of players that have entered the market. So that is why internally, as a business decision, because of just this sheer use case that we have seen, we've created a separate entity internally known as Studios. So this Studios is now being headed by the former CEO of YouTube Gaming, as well as the COO of Studios is somebody who spent 20 years at EA Games. So I think there is definitely that clarity of, having some sort of Web2 use cases integrated with, let's say, NFTs and metaverse, or even Web2 traditional gigantic studios making Web 3.0 games. So I think those are the two, three use cases that we've seen really take off.
Our conversation can go on and on. It seems like you're an encyclopedia of so much information, which is so new and so fascinating. So thank you so much, Ashima, and look forward to having many such conversations or inviting you to panels which we host on our collegefair.live platform. So long and all the best. And do share any resources, links, which I'll post to the comments section in on our LinkedIn, on Facebook, on whoever is still on Facebook, let's say, and also on YouTube. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.